it was always about the money back then. I'm from the mindset money gives you choices. So even when I was working in insurance broking, I was involved in trying to run a fashion brand, a gold mine in Guinea, right? I was trying so many different things. My aim was always to try and be my own boss. Always. I'm not going to keep working. I wanted the freedom of being able to make my own decisions. The reason why SThree has been so successful over the years is it knows exactly what you need to do in the job, right? Find a specialist niche market where it's difficult to find candidates. If it's difficult to find candidates, there's a premium. If there's a premium, you can charge a fee for it. And it's the same model now as it was back in 1990. Then to me, people overcomplicate recruitment. They overcomplicate it. And because I'm a simple person, I kept it very simple. Use a formula, look at your numbers, and I just made sure that my numbers are better than everyone else's.
What do you know about Muslims in the workplace? And did you ever do anything, or have you ever implemented anything specifically for Muslims in the workplace?
Good question. And if I'm going to be honest with you, if I look back now, it was a very laddish, male-dominated drinking culture. So no is the answer. People used to say, yeah, do you feel like, oh wow, what an achievement? Do you know what? I had an element of arrogance maybe, that I think, why can't I be? Why can't I be the top if I can prove it? Why not me?
Welcome back to another episode of the Rizq podcast.
Yeah. And like, I was like, whoa, they needed someone when I'm not around. He was a celebrity for my rap before I was telling you this earlier, because my YouTube channel. With their family, like there's going to be no one else doing it. So the motivational context.
No risk, no Rizq. Get following the YouTube channel now. He is the man.
What's going on, guys? Welcome back to another episode of the Rizq podcast. Today we've got a very, very special episode with someone who I've known for a long, long time, though we've only had a couple of interactions. Each of those interactions were very, very meaningful, and I think it's a big privilege and an honor. And it's one of those if you know, you know moments. So if you know, you know. We're here today, sat with. Well, I'm gonna let him introduce himself properly, but he goes by the name of Gary Elden. So Gary, thanks so much for being there today.
Good to be here. Hope not to disappoint.
No. I mean, I think just you being here is big enough. So yeah, thanks so much for that. So Gary, the main reason that I wanted to bring you here, and for the people watching at home, is because you're someone who's had quite an impact in my life. You know, we've been speaking and stuff, and I haven't really said that to you, but I wanted to say that to you now on camera, that, you know, when I joined this company, when I first graduated from university, I got a phone call from a company. They said, hey, we're looking for recruiters. And I went through the process. I joined this company called Huxley Associates, and I have to say that it's changed my entire life. And that's a company that you founded. So first of all, I mean, it'd be good to just get a bit of a blurb, if you will. I didn't want to print out your LinkedIn CV.
Yeah. No
so
worries. How
how would you describe yourself and your career?
I think I've been pretty fortunate. So most people, as you mentioned earlier, that they would have left university and we would have tapped them up, maybe their first job or second job out of uni. And I didn't go down that route. So my route was I left school at 16. I went to a school that wasn't really academic, didn't really push you to go to university, didn't even really know much about university, even though I was in all the top classes. And I got a job as a junior because I wanted to wear a suit and a tie for some reason. My dad used to say to me, get a job as a tradesperson, you can be your own boss. And I just didn't appeal to me. Right? I've got really soft hands. I don't like manual work. So I got this job, an office junior, and then my second job was in insurance broking. So that really opened my world to a different array of people. You know, I was brought up in Camberwell, in a council estate, and so the people I've always surrounded were people from a council estate. And so all of a sudden I'm working in the City of London for Lloyd's Insurance Brokers, and I'm meeting people in pinstripe suits and polka dot ties, and you know, from different backgrounds, going to university, and it opened my eyes to what was out there. But I also saw it was a very, you could see there was a sort of class system there. So you had people from middle class backgrounds went to university working on insurance placements, and then you had people from working class background who didn't go to university working in the claims department. So you could see the divide there. So I'm aware of the racial divide, but you'd only see the class divide. And
how old are you at this point?
I was 18.
Okay.
So I was really, I was blown away by it all, and I wanted to conform. So I was wearing pinstripe suits and polka dot ties, thinking I'm part of the gang. And I worked there for about for 4 years, and I was realising, wow, this is amazing. But after 4 years, you start to realise, hold on, these promotions that are going on, their dad's a Lloyd's underwriter who's friends with the MD, and they talk a certain way, and they dress a certain way, and they sound, and I felt this is not a meritocratic environment. So I realised at that stage that I needed to try and get into a career where you're judged on what you do, not who you know. So that's got me into sales. So I left insurance broking and got a job in a estate agency for a couple of years, and then I was lucky enough to find recruitment, and I worked for a company back then called Computer Futures, and the founders of the company were from working class background who'd done really well. Didn't care about what colour you were, what religion, maybe what football team you supported, because they were Tottenham fans and I was an Arsenal fan. But it really was an environment that I felt, I can excel here. And I'd seen a guy called Sunil, who got promoted after a couple of years to run his own company within the group. And I was thinking, well, that's possible. And then I loved that idea. And that's after 5 years of working there, I got the opportunity to start Huxley. And that's where it all started back in 1990.
Wow. No, I was one.
You were one. Thank you. Thank you for
reminding me. That's very interesting. Yeah. Okay. Cool. So you were starting your own business when I was just almost coming into this world.
Wow. That's crazy, right?
It's mental, but no, I think it's and like I said, it's a business that has literally changed my life, and I'll go into some of the reasons for why, and I'm sure during this interview. But what I really want to kind of start with then is your upbringing then, because again, for those watching, I'm sure most people in S3 will be watching this, in awe and inspiration at who you are, and they'll know where you come from. And for those that don't know, S3 is a FTSE 250 listed company, so one of the largest companies in the UK. Gary was the CEO and the head of. So one of the things that I remember you talking about when you first became CEO was your journey, and the fact that and one of the people, the characters, and you mentioned him already so far, was your father. And your father was a black cab driver, is that right? Mm-hmm. So just tell me a bit about your parents. Where were they from? How did they meet? How did they come over to the UK? And then kind of where do you fit into the picture?
So my dad was from Jamaica, and he came over during the Second World War to fight for Queen and Country. So he joined the RAF. So he loved the idea of fighting for the motherland. He lied about his age, and he came over, joined the Air Force. He was in air traffic control, and he worked even after the war there, and was going. I remember he said he was going for jobs as air traffic control, and he couldn't get jobs. He was a sergeant, and he still couldn't get jobs because he realised his colour was working against him. So he met his first wife, who was English, and then had children, and then realised he couldn't make money doing the type of work that he was doing. He did different jobs, and then decided to become a black taxi driver. So my dad he left Jamaica at a very young age, no family around him, and then basically just made the most of his situation. And he was my dad was always about giving back. He wasn't money motivated, to be honest. He was very bright, very articulate. So he's pushed on a lot of aspects of make sure you know your maths and learn a new word every single day. He was very pushed on a lot of things, but he ended up becoming a taxi driver. He was the second black taxi driver in the UK.
Oh, wow.
And then after that, he decided to teach the knowledge to people that were mainly unemployed and try and give people an opportunity. So every time I get in a black taxi, and if it's usually a black taxi driver, I asked if they know my dad, and they said, yeah, I know. He had a knowledge school in Clapham. And so he really was about helping others. He actually helped more people outside the family than in the family sometimes, because he always looked for helping the underdog, right? So he had a very kind heart, but wasn't astute in the business sense of things, but didn't really care about money or anything. So he was a big influence on me. But to be honest, I always talk a lot about my dad, but the rock behind the family was actually my mum. So my mum was English. She was brought up in West London. She had a tough upbringing, and she brought me and my brother up, and she always always had a meal on the table, always wore nice clothes, saved her family allowance, So she sacrificed a lot for us. And so although my dad gets a lot of the plaudits, it's my mum who is the rock behind the family that basically gave us, me and my brother, solid foundations. And from that foundations, you know, I was brought up in an environment where I had a mum and a dad. Most of my friends never had a mum and a dad. And you could see as you get to 13, 14, the importance of having a dad around you influences you and impacts you. So when my friends were going off in slightly different directions, I still had the fear of my dad. So he always left me on the sort of on the right path. And he installed that sort of discipline to me and making sure, you know, you work hard for things. So I was lucky enough, you know, to be brought up in a pretty rough area, but I had solid foundations at home. So that basically set me up really well.
Yeah, that's really interesting. That's almost parallel to how I grew up as well, where, you know, I grew up in a very, very kind of rough area. It's like one of those synonymous type of areas, and if you know that area, then you'll know that place. And there was just always something that kept me away from kind of, okay, my friends are dealing drugs, but I'm not going to, you know, I was never around at those times, you know. It was kind of like, you know, whatever that, is that kind of what it was like for yourself then as well?
Spot on, right? There was, look, my friends and, you know, people I was brought up with, all hustling, right? And there was, you know, I was brought up in an estate, and we got stopped by the police a lot of the time, right? And you can see the resentment building up. Or you'll see dads of some of the girlfriends that you'd go out who are extremely racist, and you'd have to sort of hide. So we was brought up in an environment. I was a predominantly black area. Most of my friends were of Jamaican heritage, and we experienced racism at a very young age. And you can understand why people become resentful, why they fight against the system, and then they go down a different path. And I think because my skin's slightly lighter, to be honest, and being of mixed race, I think sometimes you're accepted more, I believe, right? I remember we used to go to clubs together, and I remember saying you know, I'd go in there and say, have you got a membership? They question me, I'll still get in. And my mate, who's a lot darker than me, would go up to the door and say, you can't come in. Right? So I know that sometimes I got treated differently from some of my friends, and I understand why they became quite militant about it, right? And I always, you know, I feel passionate about black causes and things like that, but I'd never experienced it to the same degree as my friends have. And so you can understand why they went down that path of making money in a different route. I could have quite easily gone down that path, but I realised that the idea of going to prison I have phobia about prison, right? That's my biggest. I still have dreams about being in prison, and the idea of being locked up somewhere was the reason why I would never even consider that. Right, that was the main reason. And I also felt if I'm good at what I do, and if I find the right thing, I will make money anyway, right? Because when we were younger, we were always hustling to make money. We'd run youth clubs, and we'd have local discos that we'd run and charge people to come in. And then we progressed to having house parties where we'd go to the off license, get sale on return, and charge people to come through the door. And I was always at the center of trying to make money. Then when it was in the house time, the house raves, right? We used to go into warehouses and do acid house dues and stuff like that. So I was always looking at ways of making money, but I didn't want to go down a route where I'd end up maybe in prison.
That's so interesting, because so many people now, you know, have gone through that life, and they're coming out and they're kind of preaching about, you know, why you should stay out that life and not go into prison. And so you from very early on knew that's not that. First of all, you knew that was a consequence of that life, that's something that could happen. How come you figured that out? Was that the influence from your parents, or what was it?
I think my dad was always really tough about, you know, you've got to work hard in life. You're gonna, you know, he explained there's going to be racism's going to exist, right? You're gonna have to work that much harder. You know, you must have heard this before, right? You've got to work that much harder in order to get into that same space. So my whole ethics was about work hard, right? Work hard, and then obviously work smart. And if you do both, then you can excel. And I think one thing I did have, although, you know, I didn't go to university, I was street smart, and I also had common sense, right? So I could judge situations pretty well. You know, I've had knives held up to me before, chased by National Front, you know, so I've been in an environment where you go, whoa, this is scary, right? Life-threatening environments. Going into a work environment, it's not life-threatening, right? So I wasn't scared of anyone at work as I was maybe back on the streets, right? Yeah. But at work, I'm in an environment where you go, what's the worst you can do? I lose my job, okay, I'm not going to lose my life, right? So my attitude was always, I didn't even teachers, right? I was never overawed by them. I didn't care about teachers if they. I couldn't be bullied by a teacher. Right? I see teachers bullying kids, and I couldn't be bullied at work, right? Because I've seen real bullies, and they scare me. You're not going to scare me, right? So I remember Bill saying that I didn't have one chip on my shoulder; I had 2 chips, right? And it wasn't. I don't see it as a chip, right? I was in an environment where it's survival of the fittest, right? So if I'm going into the work environment, or if I hear something I'm not comfortable with, I'm going to speak up about it, right? So to me, I always had an opinion, but I also really understood the importance of working really hard.
That's really cool. So when it comes to, obviously, you went into the working world when you were kind of like 16, 17, 18, that type of age. Was school not something that you were interested in, or what was the reason that you went into the working world at 18?
I was in all the top classes, right? So I left school with 5 O levels. I remember turning up for the interview, and Russell, who was my boss at the time, said, "Well, you're not very academic, are you?" And I was like, "I've got 5 O levels." All my friends have got CSEs, right? They had CSEs back then, not GCSEs. And I said, I was in the top classes, right? But my teachers, when people tell stories about a teacher that influenced their lives. I saw a documentary recently with Ian Wright, and his teacher came in and he started crying, going, "I didn't know you was alive." And you could see what an impact he had on his life. Not one of my teachers I could look back and go, "You really cared about me or what to achieve," or they just had a job to do. My headmistress, remember, calls my parents in when we're doing a assessment and said I should do like a city and guilds type course. So anyone of colour, it seemed that you go down this route of doing a practical job. And I'm thinking, I don't want to do that. I'm in top maths class, top English class, history. Why are you pushing me down that route? Why are you not telling me how to get a job in a bank or in insurance broking, or in all of a sudden she's stereotyping me and putting me into this label of doing manual work again. So my school experience really, most of my friends didn't even finish school, right? It had the second highest truancy rate in London, the school did, right? It wasn't a great school, right? But I loved it. I loved it because I played sports all the time, right? So, and I was with my friends. So to me, school wasn't a journey of going down academia because I didn't know that route was available. That's the only reason.
And so you spoke about, a lot of your friends were hustlers. Obviously, they're doing their own path. You were going down your own path, and so now you're going into the working world. Was there ever? I mean, like today, just before we came in here, we were speaking about entrepreneurship and starting up your own business, and I think that's a reality that is very prevalent today because of the internet and things like Hire Genius, etc., that we can speak about later, that help people to set up. Did you ever want to set up your own business? And just to kind of add some context to this, that hustling mindset is very much about, and I'm speaking from experience, very much about making money. Hey, we've made some money, that's great. Whereas setting up a business is more about, okay, what are the systems that we're going to put in place to make sure that this money is consistently coming in and is predictable, etc. So did you ever have the mindset of kind of continuing in that hustling mindset, making money? Did you ever think about, I need to set up a business, or were you always about, look, I need to get into a good job, and that's what the best option is?
Mine was always about, it was always about the money back then. Right? I'm from the mindset money gives you choices. So even when I was working in insurance broking, I was involved in trying to make money in one form, trying to run a fashion brand, a gold mine in Guinea, right? I was trying so many different things. When I was an estate agent for 2 years, I became a manager after 1 year. And then my old boss said, let's set up our own estate agency. So we spoke to the guys I used to work for Winkworths. We knew it was for sale. We went in, we agreed on the price, and then they moved the goalposts and we didn't go ahead with it. So my aim was always to try and be my own boss, right? So that was always, I'm not going to keep working in that environment and just climb the ladder and think it's great. I wanted the freedom of being able to make my own decisions. Now, to be honest, there's some true entrepreneurs out there that put the risk, put everything on the line, right? I wouldn't say I was an intrapreneur, and what I mean by that is that I was fortunate enough when I started in Computer Futures in 1990. After 5 years of working there, Bill realised that I wanted to do something on my own, and rather than leave, he gave me equity in the business that I ran, gave me freedom to run it, gave me the financial support. So I had the best of both worlds, right? So people will now put their properties on the line. They take real risk. I didn't have the same sort of risk because I was fortunate enough to have backers to start my own business. But when I started my own business, it had my own identity. It wasn't exactly the same as what Computer Futures was doing. So it was always about being in control of your own destiny and being your own boss. That was always in my mind. But my most important thing was I want to make money. Because I want to make money because at that time, I want all the materialistic things. I want the nice clothes, I want the nice car, I want the nice property, and everything that goes with that. And from my mindset, that's all I want. I want to make money. And the best way to make money is if you run your own business.
Fantastic. And I think that making your own money is definitely part of the culture of Huxley, because I remember me joining, that was one of the turning points, was just like, look, there's so much opportunity, mate. Like, there's so much all you need to do is sit behind this desk, do these things, and the world's your oyster.
Let me explain what happened. And you're right. So I was working at Computer Futures 2 years in, and in my second year, I was one of the top performers. And in the third year, my numbers started dropping off. And my bosses came in and was like, what's going on? Nothing. What I was doing, I had a Caribbean takeaway that I opened up, right, in Lee High Road, called LBW, right, because my dad was big into cricket and so was I. So it's a West Indies takeaway. So I used to leave work at 6, work in the Caribbean takeaway till midnight. Used to drive the chef home. I used to have a Renault 5 GT Turbo, which was a company car. I got stopped by the police nearly every single night, right? Then finish the takeaway, go to work and do the same thing. And I do that 6 nights a week. And I remember my bosses found out that I was running this takeaway on the side and my performance dropped off. And they said to me, I thought they were going to sack me. And they said, look, okay, your performance is not where it needs to be. You need to think about what you want to do. But if that's something that you're passionate about. But then I realized this takeaway was hard work, right? I had to rely on other people. They'd always let you down, turn up late. People who look after the till when you're not there, they just find the till's a bit short. People complaining, where's the chef from? Is the chef Jamaican? Is the chef Trinidadian? It was just hassle dealing with the general public. And after a year of running that, it's like, you know what? Because I wanted to set up like a Nando's equivalent of Caribbean takeaway, just a franchise of them all. So that was my vision, right? I'm not going to have one takeaway. I wanted to make the service a lot better, less attitude when you normally go into Caribbean takeaways, right? It was more of, right, how can I franchise this out? And when I realised, I did the maths and I was thinking, hold on, I could be doing this in recruitment. I could really run my own recruitment business. Why am I getting involved in something like this when I can make money doing this? So I had that sort of eureka moment, went, you know what, let me put everything into this. And if it doesn't work after 3 or 4 years, then I'd maybe look at something else. But I've got to work 100% at this. If I'm working at 50%, I'm not good enough to beat other people in the business working 50%. They're working 100%. I'm not as bright as some of them, and I'm not working as hard as them, then I'm going to fail. So if I'm doing a bit of both, I'm going to do both badly. Either give up recruitment and do that 100% of the time, or give up that. So I decided to put my focus on recruitment, and then the following 2 years, I was able to excel because I put 100% into it.
Yeah, that's so interesting. And, that's like, there's famous books written about that concept, which is just focus on one thing. And that's a prime example of why you need to, because if you're spinning 2 plates, you won't be able to maintain both of them equally or as good. It's almost like you gain more leverage when you focus in on one thing.
And it puts a strain on your relationship as well, right? It puts a strain on everything, right? Because you're tired. You're coming home, you're working all those hours, and you need to recharge your batteries. And it wasn't enjoyable. I would say it's one of the worst years of my life, actually, trying to do both. But I suppose I had to get out of the system, right? If I didn't do it, then I'd always be, maybe I could have been the Nando's of the Caribbean, right? I'm glad I tried it, to be honest. Sometimes you need to fail at things to appreciate it.
Absolutely. All roads lead back to recruitment, as we were saying earlier. And so it's interesting. So I want to, because you joined Computer Futures with some experience in
sales.
The working world,
in
right?
Sales, yeah.
In sales, and you worked for other businesses. So when I joined Huxley, I was just like, I have no clue about anything. Oh, you guys offer me a job? Oh, you think I'm good? All right, I'm just going to join. It turned out to be a great decision, but with yourself, I think you probably were at a stage where you could probably look around and assess things and analyze things in a bit of a better state than kind of like a fresh graduate of university.
Do you know what? I think as a grad, I think you have more options. I didn't have many options. My other option was sales, right? I was a manager, right, looking after more than one branch. I was on 28, 30 grand a year. I had a company car. And when I went for a job with Computer Futures, it was like, okay, you're starting as a trainee. You're on a 8 grand, 9 grand basic, no guarantee. And I'm like, what? I've got 2 years sales experience and worked 4 years in insurance brokers. I've got 6 years experience. And obviously I was rough, but I said I had a track record. Didn't matter. I had to make a sacrifice. I had to give up a company car. I had to give up a salary that I was earning 3 times what I was earning in recruitment. And I had to start at the bottom. I remember going to a recruitment show and I'm turning up, giving pens to everyone. I'm thinking, this is degrading, mate. What's going on? I'm like the office skivvy, right? All of a sudden, I've been a manager of an estate agency, and now I'm a trainee recruitment consultant giving out pens to everyone else so they can take notes at this recruitment fair. I felt like that, right? I felt really, really small, but so you have to go through it to appreciate it as well, right? So yeah, so being a grad, not having a degree, limits you, right? And that's a good thing sometimes because a lot of people I know who are grads, they join recruitment after year 2 years, go, oh, I'm going to go into marketing, I'm going to go into HR, I'm going to go, because they've got a degree that gives them options. So that's the benefit of having a degree, in my opinion. It just gives you more choices than when you don't have a degree. Even if you go to America, right? If you haven't got a degree, they won't even look at you in some of these jobs. So it's unfortunate, but you might think I had more options because I had 6 years commercial experience. I never. I had one other job offer from another recruitment company, and they turned me down. So this is the only job that I got offered.
That's cool. So what was it about recruitment? Why did you want to join recruitment? And then obviously, you mentioned, was it Russell Clements who hired you?
Russell and Simon were basically, Bill and Simon were the founders. Russell was, I think, their second ever person. Russell was my direct boss, yeah.
So I joined when there was, some 3,000 people. You joined when there was how many people?
28
people.
28.
So it was like basically one office at the time
Yeah.
of just. And what was the model like of Computer Futures? Was it like specialists or was it everybody working on anything?
It's all IT and specialism. The reason why SThree has been so successful over the years is it knows exactly what you need to do in the job, right? Find a specialist niche market where it's difficult to find candidates. If it's difficult to find candidates, there's a premium. And if there's a premium, you can charge a fee for it. And it's the same model now as it was back in 1990, right? So it was all about get a candidate, and by then you're advertising in the local, Computer Weekly and Computing magazine, right? So we used to dominate. Bill and Simon worked out you dominate the press. You'll get the more CVs you get in, then you've got more choices to show to your clients. So you get as many CVs out as possible, and if you get a job, you get 3 interviews in that job, and another agency only gets 1. Then you've got a better chance of filling a job. So you just do the numbers. So they worked out very, very early the importance of controlling the candidate. And I think in specialist markets, that's still critical.
Yeah. So what was it about these guys that you thought, okay, it's going to be better than insurance. It's going to be better than anything else I'm doing. This is where I want to go now.
Because they started like me, right? So they're all from working class backgrounds, right? They demonstrated how much money you can make, right? They were driving lovely cars, nice clothes, earning good money, right? So show me the money, right? And they were showing me the money, right? You'd get to the end of the month and Bill used to walk around with checks and say, this person's got a 10 grand check, this person, and you'd go, wow, right, I want some of this. And the fact that your salary is determined by how many deals you do, that's what I loved about it. So if I want to work a 7-day week and work on more CVs and get more CVs out, no one's stopping you. You just put your CVs on the pile, and the secretaries will type up the cover sheets for you, and it's on a first come first serve basis. So I'd got more CVs out than everyone else. I worked on more CVs than everybody else. So I played the numbers game, right? And then when I remember getting a check once, and I remember Bill giving me this check, and Jeremy Beadle about, you think it's a prank. I got this check one month, and when you look around going, is this legal? I'm placing someone into a job and you're giving me this. I earned more in that month than my mum earned in the year.
Wow.
And I was like, wow, this is amazing. Why isn't everyone else getting into recruitment? And why isn't everyone else working harder and earning more money? It just blew my mind. I was thinking, you could double, triple your earnings if you work harder. Well, most people just, oh yeah, I'm earning good money. I'm happy with that. Go home and have a good lifestyle, right? I'm not knocking it, but it was just one of those things you go, wow, this is the nearest thing I thought. You know, if you're my ideal job would have been like a professional footballer or a professional sportsman, basketball player or something. But to me, this was like the second best way of earning money, right? I didn't have the qualifications maybe to be a trader. I didn't know about being a hedge fund. I didn't know about any of those industries. So it was like recruitment. I can understand people's needs, match them with a client's needs, put the two together, and you're going to pay me for doing that? Wow. So to me, it was it was just unbelievable.
That's so funny. I remember doing my first deal, and I was like, so that's the job. So that's what you have to do, and then you get paid this much. Okay. And I remember saying to someone, I was like, we can't tell anybody about this. We can't tell anyone about this. We've got to keep this a secret. This is too good. This can't be. And obviously, you go through recruitment and you realize, okay, it is hard work.
Of course it is, yeah.
But when you get those good months and when you have consistency in your billing, there's nothing better. There's nothing better than when you're just flying and you're making placements and anyway. So I completely, when you said what you said, I thought back to my first deal and I was like, it's exactly the same feeling. I think that's what the great thing about recruitment is because even between Bill Bottrell who started the company and yourself who joined the company, you still need to do the same thing to make the money. It's still the same thing. Obviously he's probably at that point managing and leading and stuff like that. But for him to have got to where he got to, he had to do what you did. So there's that humility that everybody has in recruitment that, I'm where I am because of what I've done.
It's the culture. The culture was if you're a good biller, you'll get an opportunity to be a manager. If you're a good manager, you get an opportunity to be a director. So to me, not every top biller is a good manager, right? But the respect that you've got as a biller means if you become a manager and I ask you to do something and you'll look at me and go, well, you used to do it, so okay, I'll listen to you.
Yeah.
If I'd come in and say, do that, and they look at you and go, what have you ever done? And to me, I used to sometimes see some trainers used to come in and try and teach me, and I'd look at them sometimes and go, you're teaching me to do something you've never done yourself, right? So I find it hard to respect someone like that. So the beauty of this job is every single person who was in a management position had earned the right to be there. It wasn't because they were friends with someone.
Yeah, absolutely. And so tell me about those kind of your first deal then. Actually, in fact, tell me about your onboarding, because one thing that I've seen is that SThree and Huxley probably have the best onboard. And I'm not just saying this because you're sat in front of me, but I think, at least in my experience, was the best onboarding of probably any other company that I've seen, not just in recruitment, but outside of recruitment as well. There's a big emphasis on the training, on getting people in. So what was it like for you when you came in? What was the mentorship or the training? How did you learn how to be a recruiter?
I had 7 or 8 interviews before I got the job. And I wasn't a slam dunk. I had to keep ringing up and saying, any news, any news? So I think they must have thought, you know what, we'll give it a go and see what happens. And give Russell his due. Russell was my first boss. And I'd never used we had a Wang system, never used a Wang system before.
Heard of it, to be fair.
Couldn't get my head around it. So Russell gave me a cards index system, right? So I used to write people's name on the card and then write their skills like C++, Unix, MS-DOS or whatever the skills, right? Salary and location. So I used to say, right, you're going to work the PC market. It was a new market back then. And I was like, okay. And basically, you ring as many candidates as possible and find out what their needs are. And within 2 or 3 months, you'll understand the buzzwords. But I used to get a job, used to come in, I used to go through my box and turn the box around. All right, I've got 3 candidates, get the CVs, fax them over, and then try and sell in, right? So the training, you're right. Russell would sit down with me. He will close deals for me and get me to listen in on the call. They prep you on what to do and what to say. But you're also surrounded by so many other people that you can go over and listen to what people are saying. And it was brilliant, right? So you fed off each other. You just sit around people and see who is successful and why they're successful. Sunil, who went up set progressive, he was he used to be upstairs. I used to go to his desk and he'd have piles and piles of CVs in envelopes going out. And I'm like, what are you doing? He said, I'm posting these CVs out, right? So you could see people work in certain different ways. So to me, the environment was the best learning you could have. We'd bring in external trainers, but the training was mainly done on the job by managers who'd done the job themselves. So therefore you can relate to them. So Russell would talk me through all aspects of training, what you need to do, how you need to do it. And he would also do his own deals as well as help me close deals as well. So it was all about how you can help each other. And you're right, the onboarding and the scrutiny that you had to go through to get a job there was tough, right? So 1 in 20 people would get the job. They just want that. Have you got that desire? Are you intelligent enough? Have you got what's your morals? Usually it's, are you a Labour supporter, right? Rather than Conservative, right? They're very sort of, champagne socialists, right? And so they did create a sort of inner club. And looking back, it was that bondage and that bond that you had was quite powerful. But the training was very much on the job training, structured, showing you how to do all aspects of recruitment. And I think a lot of people still use that now. And SThree has been, as so many companies have been created out of SThree, thousands and thousands. And when you talk to a lot of them, they say, what I learned there gave me the foundations to start my business. And the grounding that they got is what they usually put in their own businesses now.
Yeah, it's interesting because when I've spent some time at other recruitment businesses as well, I think to myself like are these things not obvious that we were doing in SThree? Like, is it just why are you guys doing things like that? And it just boggles the mind. And I think one of the things at SThree that you mentioned is like that experience that you had is still the same experience that I had 10 years ago when I joined, and people still have today. And it seems as though they had the formula very early on, and they've just stuck with that formula.
They have.
So tell me about your first deal then. What was your first deal like? Do you still remember the name? Do you still remember any of those details or anything like that?
No, look, I joined in September, and there were people around me doing deals left, right, and centre, and I was a slow starter. I didn't do my first deal until November.
So you started doing
September
till November.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
it's not that bad.
I know, but back then people like, and I did 3 deals in November.
Okay.
And I thought, okay. And my deals are a lot smaller because I was working the PC market, where the salaries are slightly lower. But that when I did those 3 deals, you start thinking, I can do this.
Yeah.
And my view on this, and unless you do 3 deals consistently each month for 3 months, then you haven't cracked it, because anyone can get lucky in a month, right? So it wasn't until maybe 4 or 5 months after that I consistently were able to do deals, and then I realised, I've worked out the formula now, and the formula wasn't too complicated, right? Get good CVs, send as many CVs out to as many people as possible so they know these CVs available. If there's a hook, you ring up, have you got the CV? What do you think? Think of that person, and you sell in. And I realised that I needed to create enough chances. If you don't shoot a goal, you can't score. If you've got 10 attempts and you get 2 in, great. So I used to kick a lot of balls at the net, and maybe 2 would go in. And then after a while, I come better at the job. Then 3 would go in out of 10. Then 4 would go in out of 10. Then 5 would go in out of 10. And you realise, oh wow, 6. And right then you're shooting 20 balls at goal now because you're better at what you do, and you're converting 70%. So all of a sudden you're doing double figures. You're doing 10, 12, 14 deals in a month, right? So all of a sudden, once you know the formula, then to me, people overcomplicate recruitment, right? They overcomplicate it. And because I'm a simple person, I kept it very simple. Use a formula, look at your numbers. I used to judge everything by numbers, right? And if you've got 10 interviews, you do 1 deal. If you do 20 interviews, you do 2. 10 to interview. If you do on contract, do 3 interviews, you do 1 deal. If you do X amount of send outs, you get an interview, right? Or your phone time, you spend 2 hours on the phone, outbound calls. So all that, to me, I worked out the formula, and I just made sure my numbers were better than everyone else's.
Yeah. No, that's just so. It's so, because this is the thing. You're absolutely right. There's no difference between what we're told to do and what the actual thing is, and that's coming from you. What you're saying is exactly the same thing that I heard every other manager say, and things that I've told other people to do, and it's just just do these things, do it consistently, do it every single day, do it to a good quality, and then everything else will just come. Like the results and the money is a byproduct of doing these activities, which are the KPIs.
But the problem is some people work the wrong candidates, right? So it's not, you know, you need to look at that candidate and say, is that a good candidate? Let's call it an A grade candidate, a really good candidate. Most people spend too much time working on B and C grade candidates and then wonder why they're not getting the same bites, right? It's harder to find the quality candidate. It's to control the quality candidate. They're going to be slightly more arrogant, right? So you've got to be able to win them round and convince them not to go anywhere else. So it's not just doing the numbers, it's making sure you work with the right ingredients, right? Make sure the ingredients are in the right place. So to me, it was work the best candidates. The best candidates will pull in other jobs as well. I'd even work candidates and think, get that candidate out, get someone to bite on it, and even if I know the candidate might not be interested in it, I then can sell someone else in.
Yeah.
So to me, it was about working smart as well, right? Or when you send a CV out, change the profile to reflect what the client wants to hear. So if the client says, I want someone who's a team player who can work under pressure, you change the cover sheet to say, really good team player, works under pressure, wants to work for a company in, let's say it's retail. So you put that in the cover sheet. Most people just do a standard cover sheet and send it out to everyone and go, oh, I'm not getting any bites. So it's the little things that you do different that makes you from being an average consultant or someone who's exceptional at the job. And some people you can't teach that to because they just don't get it. You might say it to them, but they miss it. And when they miss it, they go, oh, that was an unlucky month. There's nothing unlucky about it, right? You just weren't looking at things properly. Or when a candidate says, yes, I'll accept the job, they'll start high-fiving, ringing the bell. Candidate drops out and they go, oh, that was bad luck. No, it wasn't bad luck because you didn't check with the candidate. You didn't find out what their real motivation was. You didn't do your job as thoroughly as you should have. Otherwise, you'd have less dropouts. So there's a lot more to it, but if you work it out and you get to the formula, then you can be. I think you can be successful.
100%. I've only had one dropper, and that was probably the worst feeling ever because actually he played me. He played me for a fool. He took my offer. He went back, took a counter offer.
Of course,
and it was all. But again, it's like after that, never again because I was ruthless with my candidates, like absolutely making them sell to me why I should put them forward.
Exactly.
And that's that whole mindset shift, like you said. Like you just don't want to feel like that again.
People used to work on relocators, right? And you go, right, has that person ever left where they live? Do their kids go to local school? And they go, this guy's not going to relocate. He's only said he's unemployed. He'll take the job, but if anything else comes along, he's going to drop out, and that's what would happen, right? And people spend all their time working on relocators. Going to go, look how great the CV is, right? So little things you just got to work out along the way. Otherwise, you're just going to waste a lot of time.
Yeah. So you joined Computer Futures. You'd kind of cracked that code. Now you've got it right. You're in the flow. You mentioned that you started a Caribbean restaurant as well. Then, so what was going through your mind at that point? Then it was the money you're making not enough, or was it just the opportunity that you wanted to do this? You know, what was it that made you think I'm going to try something else as well at the same time?
Just always found going to Caribbean takeaways, the whole experience, quite daunting. It was the food was always running out, or got a lot of attitude when you went in there. The service was bad. I'm thinking, if I can do this well, this could be massive. So I always felt this is something I wanted to do. I don't know why, but just something I wanted to do because I love Caribbean food. Loved the whole culture element of it. So this is something that it was my way of, doing something that I felt passionate about. So I just wanted to do something that was mine, right? I was still working. I felt I was still working for the boss, right? This was mine. This is something that was mine to succeed or mine to fail, right? So I just felt I needed just to try it. I just needed to try it.
Yeah. No. I think that someone like yourself has that kind of itch that you need.
It was an itch.
To scratch it.
It was an itch. Yeah.
You need to find out what's on the other side. So that makes sense. So then obviously your performance at CF dropped. You're having chats now with Bill and Russell. They're looking at you like, mate, what's going on with your billings? And they found out now. And now you've made this decision. Okay, I'm going to focus on recruitment now, right? So at that point, you closed off the restaurant and you just went all in on this. Did you ever have any thoughts of like, because when we're speaking to candidates and we say, oh look, have you thought about doing this? Have you thought about doing that? Don't take a counter off and all these types of things. And from yourself now, it almost seems counterintuitive to that, where it's like, actually, I've tried that. I'm going to put that to the side now, and actually I am going to just go all in on this? Like, what was your mentality there?
My view was Sunil had just left. He started a company called Progressive, and he was killing it, and I was so jealous. And he did it in 2 years as well, right? And I was thinking, I want to do I want what he's got. He had his own brand. It was his business. He was based in, I think it was in Putney, and it was growing at such a rate, and it was catching up to Computer Futures. And I was thinking, I want my own brand. So I thought, right, I need to prove this now. So came in, and my whole mindset was like, okay, that's my aim. I need to be the top biller. So I hit that goal, and then I needed to be a manager. And to give them their due, they promoted me into a management position where there's people who had more experience than me, because they liked the fact that I would speak up and have an opinion about something, and I had a track record now. So they gave me a manager's job when I didn't even expect them to give it to me, and I had to manage people with more experience than me, and that was like quite daunting, right? And but when I got into that role, my management was like, okay, I want to be the best manager now. If I'm the best manager, then it will give me an opportunity to have my own brand, right? So I had my team was the best performing, so we had the best performance. We were growing at a decent rate. So I just proven myself as a manager now, and my management style was just copy me, right? Listen to me. I'll lead from the front and do what I'm doing. It wasn't complicated, right? And that was my management style. I took on people who I felt were self-motivated, didn't need to, shake them to do something. And I managed to surround myself with good people, and, became successfl, and it gave me an opportunity to then do something on my own. So to me, the 3 years of, leaving the takeaway and really pushing was the main thing. That's all I cared about, is like, how am I going to be number one biller, and then how am I going to be the number one manager as well.
Yeah.
And then once I did that and I had a track record, then Bill, Simon, Russ were open for me to start something on my own.
So what point was it you who approached them and said, look, I want my own brand? Was that something you did beforehand? How did that come about?
Yeah, look, I think Bill realised that I had an itch. He knew I was ambitious, so I think he was smart. He basically knew that if I didn't, I was going to go and set up on my own. So because I was earning good money, had a good track record, he'd given Sunil an opportunity, who was the top person at the time, then why wouldn't he give me one, right? So I think and it's a great model, right? If you give people the opportunity to run their own business and you've got a share of that, it's a great model, right? So it was clever on their part to keep me, otherwise they'd have lost me. Because the barriers to entry and recruitment back then was a lot higher than it is now, because you had to pay for your advertising, but it's still quite a low barrier to entry, right? You can still work from home, hit the phones. So I think because they knew the barriers to entry were so low, then how do you keep hold of your good people? Give them a share of their business and give them the support so that they can attract the best candidates. So Bill knew that if he didn't do that, I would have left. And luckily enough, they gave me my opportunity to do it. And do you know what? The one thing about it, they weren't greedy about it as well. They could have given me a lower percentage, but they didn't. And so they did a deal that I felt, I didn't come away from that thinking, I've been stitched. I felt this is a good deal. Less risk, lower rewards if I did it on my own, but overall still gonna be successful.
And so how did he know? Did you kind of make that known to him in kind of subtle ways?
Oh, always. No, not subtle, mate.
I
never subtle.
You back
No, not subtle. No, I was always about give me more. I was never satisfied. I must have been I was a nightmare to manage. It's like, why is that person? I remember there's a guy called Richard Houtman was given an opportunity to run Bristol ahead of me, and I'm like, why has he got that opportunity? I've done more than him. And Bill said to me, he goes, do you want to go to Bristol and set up? I went, no. He goes, well, shut up then. And then they brought someone in to run contracts, right, to be director of contracts. I said, why has he got that job as running contract? Why didn't you give me the goes? Have you run contracts before? Have you got experience of doing that? No. Well, shut up then, right? So I was always like, why? It's not fair, right? And so because I hadn't really been in an environment where I've been fully trust someone, I can fully trust someone. When you think, is it going to happen? So although I keep asking, I was thinking, I know Sunil's got an opportunity. I know Richard Houtman had an opportunity to start a Bristol office. I was thinking, am I going to get this opportunity, or are you just playing me? So I was always, you still got an element of doubt. And then when they gave it to me, it's like, okay, I can trust you now. So there was a trust issue, right? Because, I didn't trust the authorities. I didn't trust my teachers. I didn't trust the police. I didn't trust the environment I was in. It's hard to trust people. So I come into an environment not trusting. So when they back up what they say they're going to do, you're like, okay, are you sure? Is there a catch? And there wasn't. And I think at that time, it was like, okay, they're for real. They're not messers. They're not going to look for an excuse not to do it. They gave me the percentage that was fair. These are top guys. I'm all right. I'm all right. And then I could relax a bit more, because then they got me. Once I'm in, I'm all in. You got me, right? I'm loyal, right? I'm going to be right. I'll fight for you, right? And many times we did, but it's a different story. But it was like, okay, I'm all in now. You can't go against. I'm part of the family now. I feel like I'm a made man now.
Yeah. And so, what was the percentage that you finally agreed on with Huxley?
It's irrelevant, but I had the biggest share.
Okay, so you had more.
I had more than the other, Bill, Russell, and Simon. So I was the biggest shareholder.
Yeah, the reason I asked that is because I was offered once 5%. They said you can have 5% of this, and I was like, what's the difference? Like, I might as well just work for a company and have none of the stress. You know what I mean? Like, what's the point of even offering 5%? So that's why it had to have been, I'm guessing, something that was actually, especially coming from that type of entrepreneurial mindset where you could start a restaurant if you wanted to. You could start your own business if you wanted to. So it's like, all right, let's do this and let's make it equitable for both parties, which makes absolute sense. So where did Huxley come from then? Huxley Associates. I mean,
funny story. There was a lady called Eleanor who I brought with me, and she'd left to go and work for a banking recruitment business, and she's running a banking business. And I said to her, I'm going to set up my own business with SThree. Do you want to work for us? She goes, yeah. And I think a friend was reading a book by Aldous Huxley, Brave New World. She goes, what do you think of the name Huxley? I went, yeah, I like that. And then I came up with Associates. So we were called Huxley Associates because I wanted to sound like a middle-class law firm, right? Because I knew that I wanted to go into the banking markets, tech banking markets, because the salaries were higher, right? And SThree, Computer Futures and Progressive really didn't do much in banking. So it was a real opportunity. I wanted to do commerce in the industry and banking. And Huxley, I remember ringing up clients going, oh yeah, we've heard of Huxley. I've been going for 2 days, 3 days, right? It was a name that I felt was neutral, but it sounded old school, professional. Computer Futures, Progressive, I just don't think it had that sort of status aligns with it. In the name didn't, I don't think, stand out as well. It didn't sound as classy. So that's how Huxley came up. So Eleanor came up with the name after Aldous Huxley, Brave New World. So yeah.
Shout out to Eleanor. Because it's interesting. I remember obviously, joining SThree, and I joined Huxley Associates. And I do remember having this sense, and I still do, to be fair. I was like, Huxley is better than the rest.
Yeah.
Come on, Huxley is, Progressive. Like, I worked for Progressive, great people, but come on, I'm a Huxley man. You know what I mean? It kind of becomes part of your identity.
You do, right?
Well.
It's like playing for a football club, right?
Yeah.
You still say that's your first club, and you get moved on. You still go, I'm still, and it was like that, right? People found it difficult to move from one brand to another because it's mad, right? Psychology is like you get progressive people, futures people, real people, and they're proud of their brand, right?
Yeah.
And what they do, and it's a culture, right? We had a culture of we're the bad boys. We wanted to be the bad boys. We just go out, have lots of fun, but you used to do things like maybe we should. If I look back now, I was like, oh my God, it was shocking, right? But it was. I used to take people from all walks of life, right? It was like, I don't care what your background was, but it was, I'd have Asian, Jewish, middle class, working class. It didn't matter, right? But we're an odd bunch. But because we were odd, that's what made it great, right? So I didn't want to surround myself with people that were just like me. I always surround myself with people that can have a different perspective on things. So the type of people we took on was always maybe just don't have to have the same view, same perspective, but just as long as you're hungry and want to be successful, you can succeed here. So to break into the banking world, sometimes you'd have to put a different person in front, unfortunately, right? Because people want to relate to people that look like them, sound like them. So we brought on people that maybe went to private school, dressed like them, sounded like them, and we had a mix. We had a mix like that. So It was fun. It was those early days, I would say, were the best days of my working life. It was amazing.
And you started that office in London,
In
right?
'95, yeah.
So the first office for Huxley was where? Is that
Conduit Street.
Conduit Street?
And then we moved to a place called St Helens Place in the city, and then we ended up in King William Street, where they are now. That was one of our first offices in King William Street, and that's where SThree are still there.
Yeah, that's a massive office, isn't it?
Yeah.
And I remember there's 2 offices that I've been to. One was the office I worked in, Huxley Reading, and the other one was Huxley in London, where both were like trading floors.
Yeah.
Where you would walk in,
Yeah.
and there was that buzz. There was just this tone.
Yeah, you got the boards up, you're ringing the bell, right? And people still do it now, right?
Yeah.
You go, but then there's less phone calls now, right? It's more on LinkedIn, sending emails, right? Your marketing strategy, etc. But you'd go in there, and you'd ring the bell and throw things at people and cut your ties. You look back now and go, oh my God, yeah. It was I don't associate myself with something like Wolf of Wall Street, right? Because we didn't go that
It was
mad,
exactly
but
that Wolf of Wall Street.
But it was a fun environment. But you look back now,
Exactly.
some people wouldn't have been comfortable in that environment, right?
No.
If I look back now, it's like, whoa, yeah. But it was a buzz. What a buzz.
It was great. It was great. It really was. And I mentioned that it was a company that changed my life, and I'll tell you why. Because up until that point, I was very much I did well in pretty much anything I put my hand to, but there was never really any guidance. There was never really any praise for any of the good things that I did, unless I kind of stayed in my box and just did, got my A's. That even that was just expected. And so whenever I was doing anything else, like for example, I was that typical selling candy in school and selling, I saw laser pens and got in trouble, all these little things just to make money and stuff like that. That was never praised. That was never like, well done. eBay, no. But like, if you do your schoolwork, that's good enough. Or you're in university, okay, that's good enough. And then when I got into Huxley, it was very much like, okay, wow, like first of all, you got a job so quickly. How did you do that straight out of university? And then secondly, it was, you just need to do this and you'll be successful. And so I applied that and I got results, and then people would praise those results. Very it was a big deal to do a deal. I did my first deal after 5 weeks, did another one the following week afterwards. So I was like, whoa, everyone is like, wow, this is the guy now, right? Yeah. He's doing really, really well. And so that really boosted me up, and I realized that, if to get this feeling and to get these paychecks, I just have to do this. And so that taught me that if you just follow a process and you do it well, you will win and you will succeed in whatever that field is. And so that actually gave me a winner's mindset that you are a winner and you can win. You just need to work hard for it. And so it's kind of the most pure and the most true sense of, how to achieve success. And it's all recorded with numbers, alluding back to what you're saying. So that for me is actually why it helped me so much in my life. And even till today, I use some of the even sending a message out to someone like yourself. Not many people would do that because of that fear. But I know that you're just a human being.
Exactly.
You have your own motivations, you have your own desires, and there's no harm in trying. And the worst that can happen is you don't respond,
exactly.
or you say no. So that mentality.
It's not life-threatening, is it?
Not life-threatening. And you fail so much in recruitment. Every day you're failing. 95% of the time you're failing. So sending a message to someone is not a big deal.
Agreed. Agreed.
So that's actually one of the things that I wanted to say to you, kind of in person. It's been many years since we first met and last met. So I just wanted to mention that to you as a thank you for actually starting that business and having that as the mentality, because like I said, I always felt that Huxley was above the rest. So we were at the top SThree, but Huxley was kind of the cherry on top of that. So that mindset I still carry with me today. So that's all down to yourself. And so those early days, and when you're growing Huxley, then what were the main kind of challenges that you had when you were growing that business? And talk to me about the actual expansion, because obviously Huxley was a multinational as well. And when you were CEO, some of those businesses you had to close down as well. So tell me about that journey of kind of starting it and then growing it.
So the beauty of SThree is that you had other brands to compare yourself to, right? So I looked at Computer Futures. I was thinking they've got a 10-year head start. Progressive have got a 5 years head start. And so how do I catch them up, right? And it's all about, sometimes it's a numbers game, right? You need as many heads as possible to do deals. But also I looked at the type of markets they were doing. So the reason why banking appealed to me is back then, if the average fee was $7,000, our average fee would have been $15,000. And then we went into the quants market or trading market, and we're getting 40, 50, 60 grand fees. So I'm in a situation where if I crack the banking and also do commerce and industry in IT, in tech, then I can overtake them, right? So my whole philosophy was, how do we get more out of what we're doing, and how can I be different from them? Because Progressive did the same markets as Computer Futures. To me, they were a carbon copy. Huxley had a different spin to it, in that we had a banking business, we had account managers, we had resources. So we treated our banks differently. So SThree is very much a hunting mentality. Send lots of CVs out, sell, while the banking business is more of a farming, right? You've got the client relationships. You keep those client relationships. Keep sending CVs, because it will wind the company up. So, they complain and chuck you off the preferred suppliers list. So we had account managers that go in there, keep the client happy, business developers. So we were opening up a different business. And because of the banking model, this could take us to other parts of the world that maybe our IT business couldn't, right? So we went to New York before everyone else. We went to Hong Kong. We went to Singapore because our banking business took us there. So that was one route to hopefully catch up the rest of the brand. So we used to look at where they were. And the other thing I learned is, if you've got good people and you stick to the same philosophies of the sales philosophy, you can do it in other sectors. So when there was a .com crash, someone approached me, Mike Walker approached me and said, I think we should do engineering. And I remember speaking to Bill and saying, look, when we do engineering, he goes, look, don't, stick to what you know, sort of thing. I said, look, I think there's a market here. We do software engineers. Why don't we do hardware engineers? And from hardware engineers, you can do mechanical engineers. And from engineering, you can go into the oil and gas world. So I was the first to diversify out of IT, because I went into IT banking to pure banking. And I was the first to come out of IT into engineering. So I had an engineering business, a banking business, and an IT business. So I had different routes to grow. So I was then able to close the gap, because I wasn't just copying what they did. And I had a commerce and industry who was doing what they were doing as well. So because of that, and I managed to keep on the key people at the beginning. So I think five of the first 6 people I took on stayed with me for more than 10 years. So I was able to open up in Reading with one of my managers with only 2-3 years experience. I was was able to open up in Manchester. I opened up in Amsterdam. So I had key people that I could do that. And thankfully, I think that Bill and Russ and Simon, they backed me to do it. They could have said, well, you're expanding too quickly. But they encouraged me to do it. They didn't stop me from doing it. And made some mistakes along the way. But fundamentally, my infrastructure was good enough that I knew I'd be able to grow and catch up, and if not overtake the rest. So that the mentality was really about learn from others, picking the best things they do, but also learn from the outside world. And I think the benefit of someone like Eleanor, she worked outside of SThree and picked up some of the key skills of what you need to do in the banking world. You treat it differently. And if it wasn't for her, we wouldn't have had a banking business that was successful. So you don't have to come up with all the answers yourself. But as long as you can create an environment where it encourages people. If Mike Walker, he came up with the engineering. If he was in an environment where everybody's, no, you can't do that, we wouldn't have had an engineering business. So to me, you just got to give people the chance to be able to flourish in an environment where they feel that they can take something to the next level. And if you have people behind you doing that, then and they stay, because retention is one of the most important things in recruitment. If you keep your top people, they don't leave, then they can manage 10, 20, 30 people. And if they keep the people below them, they can manage 10, 20 people, and then you can expand. Where most companies struggle is they can't retain their quality staff.
That's so interesting. And so you mentioned, opening up all these different offices then. At what point did Huxley, when did SThree come about, and when did the brands kind of then merge together, and how was that for you?
So we became a listed company. So first we had some external investment from private equity. So they invested about 50 million into the business with the view to float the business. So then we became a PLC. So then all of a sudden my shares are converted into SThree shares. So it's all about the greater good of SThree now, right? Not just how Huxley do. So sort of the dynamics changed a little bit. So we needed to collaborate a lot more. Why we keep doing all the same markets together. What you do over there is going to affect us over here. So it meant changing a little bit. And obviously you have to answer to your shareholders. So there were changes, slight changes, but fundamentally the brands were still more or less left to their own devices. I'd run Huxley, Sonny would run Progressive, Russell would be running Computer Futures, Natasha would run Real, Sean Mossop would run Natasha would run Pathways, Sean Mossop would run Real. So we had all these different brands. We had about 12 different brands, everyone given an opportunity to do that. But to some degree now, we knew that we were part of a listed company, so we had to collaborate a little bit more than we used to. And it, being a PLC, and I learned that further on in my career, it's a different job than being a privately run business, because you have to manage things completely different.
Yeah, and so the reason I asked that question is because this is now a transition from being that kind of founding partner in that business in Huxley to now being did your title change at all? Were you still, because I know you moved into the CSO role?
Yeah, I stayed at Huxley for about 11 years.
Wow.
So
okay.
I was MD for 11 years. We got to be in funny stuff. We had an awards ceremony, right? And we were the most profitable brand in SThree, right? We hit that most profitable brand. But then they made an announcement that but because we paid out so much to our managers, our profit level dropped off. So we were number 2, most profitable. I remember being at an awards do and going, we are number 2. We are number 2. Because we was thinking, well, okay, because our managers got paid more because
Exactly.
we smashed it. And you could see the rest of the brands looking at us going, why didn't we get paid like that? Or why? Because we hit our targets, right? So if I think about it, right, we're 10 years behind Futures, 5 years behind Progressive, we became effectively the most profitable brand in SThree. So I had a good track record, and I think because we had a multi-brand and it was maybe getting a bit out of control, brands are popping up everywhere. I think they wanted to. Sunil was now like COO, so he'd been moved from Progressive to work with Russell as CEO, and then I think they wanted to pull me in so they could control me more, rather than me going off and keep opening up everywhere and growing and expanding and partying. And so I think let's bring him in. We can control him a little bit more. And so I came as chief strategy officer. Yeah.
So when you left Huxley, what was the turnover of Huxley before when you left as MD?
That's a good question. I don't know. Maybe 40 million GP, NFI, something like that. Yeah, I can't remember. I know SThree must have been GP, NFI must have been about, if we had 30%. And it was at 150 million. Maybe we're at 45 million NFI. But it was fun. I think we had about 300 staff at the time. Yeah.
So the reason I asked that is because I just want to emphasize that point that you grew this business from nothing, from 0 to 45 million a year. So an incredible thing for anybody to see. Before we kind of move on to the CSO side, for anyone who's growing a recruitment business, like we said, you've taken it from 0 to what's that, 9 figures, 10 figures, can't even count right now. What's the most important things to be able to achieve, maybe not 45 million a year, but just to achieve 100, 200 grand, a mil, something that people can aspire towards quite easily by themselves?
As I said before, be clear about what you are, right? Be clear about what your proposition is. What's your niche? What's your specialism? Why do you stand out from the crowd? What makes you different? So I think having that now, I think is more important than ever. So there's a lot of offshoots of SThree that go even more specialist than SThree and are doing extremely well because they're famous for that. So I think that's important. And the second thing is how do you retain your staff now? And I think a lot of people sometimes are too greedy, right? They want to keep 95% for themselves and give away 5% and think that's enough. And 2, 3, 4 years in, someone's got a family and they're thinking about the mortgage or private schools or whatever they're thinking about. They're thinking, okay, I'm earning good money, 200 grand a year is great. But then they start doing the maths and go, I've only got 2-3%. It's not really going to grow. There's not many SThrees, right? They've gone on to do what SThree have done. It's quite a unique story, right? Organically grown business. So they sit there and they do the maths and go, well, this business is going to get to 10 million NFI and I've only got this percentage and it's privately owned. So where's the real value unless it's sold? Very few recruitment businesses get sold. So people do the maths and go, well, I'm gonna leave. So I think if you want to really scale, Or if you want a lifestyle business, fine, right? Accept that people are going to leave 3-4 years and enjoy it, right? Earn good money, and you can earn good money out your business, making $1 million, $2 million a year. Good lifestyle, right? Beautiful, beautiful lifestyle. If you want to be bigger than that and scale it and want to sell it, then you have to retain your quality people. That's the most critical part of this job. And treat people well, and just have a smaller percentage of a bigger cake, right? So most people just want a bigger slice, but the cake's small. So depending on where your mindset is, and if you think, well, I've taken all the risk and I put all the money in, then fine. Just accept that you will eventually lose people, because it's just human nature, right? They start doing the maths and go, I can work from my bedroom and get a LinkedIn account and do it. So retaining your staff, I think, is really important, and being key about your market.
Yeah, that's very interesting. So then this transition, then, so you kind of have free reign over Huxley, and you like you mentioned, you're opening up offices. Obviously you open up in Brazil and Russia and India, and I mentioned those specifically because obviously when you became CEO, those played a big role, or you played a big role in those offices once again. So this transition to the CSO role now, how is, what's the difference, I guess, in this role? Obviously you're more looking at over all the brands, but what's the main difference, and how did you learn how to be a good CSO?
The difference is that, remember, anyone who worked for me, they grew with me, right? So it's like my children. Now I'm into a different role where there's someone else's children. So they're like family members, but they're like distant cousins. So you've got to win over your distant cousins, right? And I failed in some of that as well, right? Because slightly different cultures, they bought into someone else, it's different environment. So they see me as a blocker, all right? So the first thing I had to do is obviously understand the different brands. We needed to consolidate, because I think we had everyone. So let's say we went into banking, everyone else would want to go into banking, but then mess up the relationship because they didn't work it in the right way. Or someone went into public sector. They hear that someone else doing public sector, then all the other brands go into public sector. And someone goes into energy, oil and gas. Everyone wants to do oil and gas, life sciences. So all the brands are all trying to do all these multiple markets, multiple locations. Computer Futures are there, so we're going to go there. Huxley are there, so we're going to go there. We just ended up following each other, right? And it was just, I think it got to a stage where it was limiting us. So my first job was to cut down on the number of brands and be clear about what each brand's proposition is. So you're going to be famous for banking, you're going to be famous for life sciences, you're going to be famous for IT, you're going to be famous for engineering, and get those brands to be dominant in those. Still do IT, still do other markets, but your main brand has got to be maybe 50% of your NFI. So we did that, we consolidated that, and that was the first thing we did. So make sure. So getting people to buy into you is difficult, right? And you have to make some tough decisions. So you're closing down brands where people have been part of and grown, and you end up losing a raft of people because they're more aligned to the brand than the actual part of being part of the company. So we made some significant mistakes where, we close a brand down and you end up losing 40-50% of the people because they don't want to be part of this other brand that we've created. And so we end up losing a good brand, or markets that we lost that we never recovered. So it's difficult to juggle, but to me it was the best job actually than being a CEO, because I wasn't worried about the P&L, that Russell was always worried about, going, Gary, you want to expand everywhere, but we've got shareholders to answer to. And I'm thinking, oh, come on, Russ, this is easy. Let's just do it. Let's do accountancy and finance because Michael Page can do it. Why can't we? And to some degree, Russell, giving me his due, was like, that's not a reason to do it because someone else is doing it. Let's stick to what we're doing. And I'm like, no, we can crack it. And so I made mistakes on the way, and I give Russell his due. He gave me the freedom to do it, but I made mistakes. And but as you say, you learn from those mistakes, right? I think sometimes you think your shit doesn't stink, right? I ran Huxley. I think I'm the business, right? I'm going to do it CSO now. I can open up anywhere and succeed, and you don't. And it's sometimes you have to step back and go, okay. Yeah, you are going to you're not as great as you think you are. You need to be a bit more humble. And I think you just learn from that. It's a lesson. But I loved the job. The job was brilliant because it's about expanding in the US, right? US was about 6% of our business back then, and it ended up becoming around 25%. But the US was big nut to crack, right? So, I ended up moving out to the US for just like 18 months, opening up offices. We were in New York, but we opened offices in San Francisco, in Houston, San Diego, in Boston, Chicago. So it was exciting, right? And we were predominantly permanent business. So, I pushed to do the New York contract. So started expanding contract business. I moved people from different parts of the world. So, moved someone like Scott, who was based in Amsterdam, to go and set up in San Francisco. And there's Tom Way in London, who went out there with him, and Jeanette, so Morgan. So all these people were moving out to create opportunities. And being chief strategy officer was exciting, right? I'm doing all the exciting stuff, and Russell was doing all the stuff, speaking to investors and reporting on numbers and doing the stuff that I think I never want to do that. So I loved it. It was one of the best aspects of the job.
What was the biggest success that you had as CSO, and then the biggest failure that you had as CSO?
I'd say US is the biggest success. I'd say we had a great team, great environment, hitting record numbers. It was a real good infrastructure, and still the US business is still in a good place, right? And my failure was quite a few, actually. I think trying to do accountancy and finance, we didn't know how to work the market properly. And I'd say opening up in India, I think that market was going too early, pricing model, retaining staff, never ever made any money. And I'd say that was accountancy and doing India. I'd say that would be the two biggest.
Okay.
There's plenty more, but I'd say they're the two biggest.
No, that's absolutely fine. And the thing is like I would love to kind of go into more detail, but I just realized we've already been going for an hour and we haven't even got to the point where you're CEO yet. So I want to move on to this part, because that's obviously the pinnacle, right, of any business, is what, becoming the CEO. Least of all in a business where you've started off right at the bottom and you've worked all the way up. And I think that was one of the reasons why you were such this inspirational figure yourself, Russell. I think in particular, because you were employees of the business, you didn't start the business like Bill and Simon. You were employees of the business, you were trainees, and you worked your way all the way up, and you got to the top. That's why you guys were such inspirational figures to us, because we all saw ourselves in you. We all saw, well, we can just follow this route.
You can do it, yeah.
Yeah, here's a route. Here's the route all the way up to director. And once you get to director, then whatever happens, right? So now you became so you're CSO. Tell me about the role as CEO. Then were there conversations happening that Russell might be stepping down or anything like that?
Russell was always talking about stepping down, right? So, and Sunil had moved on. So I'd say they were the two most senior people, and I think Sunil always said he never wanted to be CEO, and he would have been a great CEO as well. I was a reluctant CEO. I never aspired to be CEO. I wasn't like, I want that job. But I also felt I could bring a different dimension to it, right? And so I felt if I do it, I can't be Russell, right? Russell is really intelligent, right? He loved me saying that, but he's a really bright person. He's amazing with investors as well. He remembers everything, right? He's got a memory. So I wasn't a Russell. So what I didn't want to do is try and be a Russell, right? There's no point. It's impossible. And you can't have two Russells, right? One's bad enough. So what I wanted to do is have my own view on it, and the two things that I thought we needed to do more of was contracts. So because contracts is more resilient in a downturn, lifetime value is higher than permanent, and what your run rate, what your run rate of your contract book's going to be, so you can basically predict your numbers a lot easier. So I wanted to put more of an emphasis on contracts, and the problem of doing that, it takes a while for that revenue to come through. So when I first went to investors and saying, right, we're gonna, for every 4-5 people we take on, we're going to put 3 on contract, 2 on perm, and then it was for every 5 we're going to take on, we're going to put 4 on contract, 1 on perm, and the numbers weren't coming through because they don't come through immediately. You could see the investors going, does this guy know what he's doing? And then I also want to emphasize more on the growth in America, because you get a 1.5 time better return in the US than you were out in the UK. And the third thing was Germany. Germany was, again, salaries were higher, margins were higher. So to me, my mindset was we need to grow those more than other areas. So that meant the UK shrunk. other regions weren't as high as priority. I needed to make sure I put the right team in place to do that. We changed the whole structure from a regional structure, so regional MDs or regional CEOs to more of a chief sales officer. We had chief operating officer. So we just changed things because I felt we brought an external company to give me advice. Right? I didn't come up with all these ideas myself, and fundamentally that was to me it was like, how do we do things differently? And then contracts now must be 80% now, 80-20 I think, maybe 75. 25, so it's very much contract geared now. Wow. It is still the most profitable part of the business. We've had a downturn recently, and you can see how some of the peers compared to SThree, they've dropped off a lot harder than SThree because they're 80% perm. So I think I've left the company in a pretty strong state, and I enjoyed the growth element of it. I didn't really necessarily enjoy going around speaking to investors, but I knew it's part of the job, and I had a good CFO and a good team around me, but it wasn't something that I loved. I think Russell loved it. I think he loved he was stimulated and he was learning new things and he found it interesting. I didn't love it. I liked the people element of the job. So to me, I was becoming more and more distant from the business, but I understood that because as CEO you learn all different aspects of the job. But what the title gives you, actually, you walk in the door and people look at you differently than when you're chief strategy officer. It's funny, right? I'm the same person, but I put a different label on top and people talk to me differently. It's like, it shouldn't be like that. But that, being a CEO, opened me up to certain awards and recognition and everything else because people see that as the pinnacle, right? But I prefer the chief strategy officer job, to be honest, than the CEO role. But it gives me a platform, right? When I'm doing advice or talking about certain subject matters, people more inclined to listen to me as a previous CEO of a publicly listed company sometimes than if I didn't have that title. So it does just change some people's external views rather than mine.
Do you ever sit back and think though, what you've achieved, where you've come from and what you've achieved, or do you just no, you don't?
No, people used to say, are you do you feel like, oh wow, what an achievement? Do you know what, I had an element of arrogance maybe that I think, why can't I be? Why can't I be the top if I can prove it? Why not me? I'm as good as anyone at selling, and I'm good with people. So I never look at it and go, I've been lucky. Don't get me wrong, right? Because I was fortunate enough to meet the people I met, and I've known people who are really clever and really bright, and even brighter than I am, and they've not had the same maybe opportunity I had. But I always think, well, why not? Why not me? So no, I think if you work hard for something and you make the right decisions, I think you just can't have that mindset. That's never been my mindset. And I don't want my kids to have that mindset. I want them to think anything's achievable. It's not for certain people, but I was lucky enough to be in an environment where it was.
Absolutely. So and just to touch again on the turnover then for SThree when you joined as CEO and when you left, what type of figures are we talking?
I think we hit 200 million NFI. I think our record was in 2007 where we made 58 million, and I took over in 2011-12. Right, there was a crash in 2008, and then just before I left, we got back to 60 million. I think we had a sort of downturn, and then you just got build up. So I think last year they might have hit 70-80 million. Right, so I think the trajectory is good. Last year was the best market ever. Right, everyone's flying, everyone's feeling it now. But I think, to be honest, I think the balance of the business, I think, is a lot better. I think not being exposed to permanent, and I think it's not long before they're 100 million EBITDA business. Right, they're not that far away from that. They turn over 1.2 billion, 1.3 billion. I think when I left, 1.2 billion. It was like 700 million turnover before that. So the business shape has changed. It's changed.
That's nuts. I mean, we're talking billions of pounds, right?
Yeah.
So you left that business in a very healthy way. You doubled the turnover almost. And then what was the decision for actually leaving the business then? Because you weren't just leaving as CEO, you were leaving a company that you'd worked for pretty much your whole life, right?
Look, there's we used to had an innovation. We set up an innovation section of the business, and I was starting to meet a lot of entrepreneurs that had these business ideas, and I felt that I'm spending time writing reports and not doing the part that I enjoy. So I lived in London. We wanted our kids to go to a school where they could play in some green and some fields and run around, as opposed to in a concrete jungle that they went to. So I think it's a stage where you realise that maybe I'm not the right person to take it to the next stage. I think I was tired, maybe burnt out even, really, and I just like the idea of investing in lots of different businesses and stepping in and then stepping out again, as opposed to I'm either all in or not. And then if I'm not all in, leading by example, then I'm a fraud, right? And if I can't give it 100%, and I wasn't giving it 100% towards the end, then it's not the right time. So I think the idea of, luckily SThree's given me the options that I can do things that I want to do, not that I have to do. So it gives me choices. I always want to have choices. So I like the fact that I've got friends at companies that I've invested in, that I'm working with, or I've co-founded, and it's more exciting now because I'm actually dealing with people again. I'm not going around talking to analysts and investors anymore. I'm talking to real people about how we're going to grow our business in tech rather than in recruitment. And so I think you've got to, as a person, you've got to evolve. I think I can talk about recruitment all day long because I know it. But when you're talking about a SaaS model now and how to grow a tech business or how to raise money if you're a founder, it's different challenges now, right? And I'm learning something new, right? I'm now speaking to VCs now rather than speaking to investors. So it's a different world, but I'm learning from it. I'm involved in cryptocurrency business as well. So I'm in, tech CRM platform, Hygienius, a CRM platform. So I've got different things that I'm involved in, and I enjoy that, as opposed to I do advisory work. So I can go in, give some advice, and step away, and I don't have to worry about managing people anymore in the way that I used to, right? That's the hardest part of it, how you keep all those egos intact. It's difficult, and don't have to worry about that anymore. It's someone else's problem.
Yeah. No, that's really, really cool. And actually, I was going to ask you about crypto and stuff like that, kind of towards the end, just in terms of like general things that you're looking into and investing into. But before we get to that, then, so you stepped down. Did you retire? Was that a retirement or?
Yeah, it was retirement, and then I started playing golf, and then I realised that I dropped my kids to school, picked them up from school, watch all their games, which I loved. But then after a while, you're like, ooh, I've got to do something now. So I just started investing and get non-exec roles and non-exec chair roles so that I can still get involved and deal with businesses. So I don't think I'll ever stop that, right? I'll always want to get involved in doing a deal, growing something. So to me, yeah, I thought I'd retire and spend more time. I think Sunil and Daly, who are both ex-SThree, they spend like 70% of their time on a golf course still, right? And they're like scratch golfers. I've just started, and I realised to get good at it, I'm going to have to spend a lot more time on a golf course. But I'm not sure if I've got the temperament. I still like a little hustle here and there.
Yeah. So Hygienius is a CRM that you've invested into. Just very quickly, just to talk about Hygienius, because obviously there will be a lot of recruitment-based people watching this. What is Hygienius? What makes it good? What happened to Apollo?
To be honest, we had Salesforce when we were in SThree, and I give advice to lots of different companies and look at all their CRM platforms. No one's ever satisfied with the platforms they've got. So Dan Malka, who's the brains behind it, approached me just as I was leaving SThree, saying, "Look, I'm thinking of starting a CRM." I go, "Are you crazy? Like, you got Bullhorn, you got this, you got this. It's competitive, it's established." And he said, "Look, just have a look at all the different CRMs," and we did, and we were shocked how poor they were. So we built an all-in-one platform that you can track your phone calls, track your SMSs. You can track it all on your phone, so everyone has a virtual number. So we have a communication platform, so that if anyone leaves the business, the data stays with you as a company. We're making it more intuitive when you're searching for candidates, the way the screens are laid out. So it's all built in. So our whole concept was simplify the CRM platform that the recruiters can use. And we built it on Salesforce because it gives you an infrastructure. So if you want reports and everything else, you've got the benefit of Salesforce. So we've just built something that we felt would make it a lot simpler. If you're a one-man band or you're a 100-man business, right? It's built for recruiters by recruiters, as opposed to all these other platforms you've got to build in. You've got to buy your search separate. You've got to buy your MIS separate. You know, you've got to buy this separate, right? Your comms package separate. We go, no, it's all there. You don't need to. So that's just been going for 3 years now. Just went live properly in January. Got sales team in place, customer service. So we've just invested quite heavily now. And the idea is to hit the 1 to 50-man business for now. You know, get those businesses, make sure, and we grow with them. You know, we give them advice as well. We teach them recruitment processes. You know, you'll go to a page and you'll see how to close a candidate, how to sell in a candidate, how to deal with counter offers. So that's all built in, right? So the idea is we get it. We understand recruitment. We've got one of the biggest SaaS platforms in the world in Salesforce, but we've customized it so that people can basically use it in the most effective way.
Yeah, exactly. And you know, without a CRM, I mean, I've seen people that want to recruit off of Excel spreadsheets, and it's like, good luck to you. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like, you will save 10 times the amount of time looking for one candidate if you just do a Boolean search in the CRM system and it comes up. So absolutely recommend, obviously, getting CRM for anyone who hasn't done that yet. And obviously Hygienist is something that you can go check out and have a look at. And from the sounds of it, obviously with something like Gary behind it, it's only going to be something that is useful for recruiters, because I very much doubt you'd put your name next to something that isn't useful.
No, of course not. It's my reputation on the line as well, right? So you've got to feel proud about it. And I think, look, it's not the finished article yet, like anything to do with tech, but we honestly believe, and it's very rare you can say that, we honestly believe we potentially have got the best product out there, potentially, right? There's still things that we need to do, but I believe what we've got as the sort of foundations, I think is better than anything else that's out there. I'm biased, but I've looked at everything out there, and I think it will, if we, you know, got still on the journey, but I think it will be able to disrupt a lot of what's going on in the CRM world, because they're all old established companies that have been going for years, and they've bolted things on. We built it in a world that's different, remote workers, so people can access everything on their phone. It's all tracked on their phone, right? Most systems can't do that. You know, you can track everything. So I think the difference is now, if you are working remote, our system's gonna as a business owner, you don't feel as, oh, where's all that data gone? Oh, it's on someone's phone. So when they leave, it goes with them, not with us, right? So you as a business go, at least I've got everything tracked on the system. And if my staff are not doing on the system, you know, you can see it. So to me, it's little things like that make a difference. Yeah, and even just thinking about the process when I'm going through things, and you know, we'd have that contact commentary on Apollo, and that was so key and vital, because you'll just see, like you said earlier, like there might be someone who prefers someone with a particular type of interest, right? And you've just got that there. Okay, let's put Arsenal just won yesterday. You've just seen it. You can say, oh, hey, congrats on last night. You know what I mean? And that just breaks the ice. Of course it does. You get your foot through the door. It's the little things, right? Absolutely. So that's really, really important and really, really key. So that's good to see you're getting involved in that. There's a big topic that, you know, we probably definitely won't have enough time to cover, purely just sitting down here, but a massive topic that you're involved in now is diversity in the workplace. So one of the things that I had as a former employee of yours is actually a question about Muslims in the workplace. So what do you know about Muslims in the workplace, and did you ever do anything, or have you ever implemented anything specifically for Muslims in the workplace? That's a good question. And if I'm going to be honest with you, if I look back now, it's very much a drinking culture. Right? It was, well done, incentive, go down the pub. Well done, we're going to go on the lunch club and all get drunk. Well done, we're going to go on a trip away and drink lots. So if I'm honest with you, it was a very laddish, male-dominated drinking culture. So no is the answer. Towards the end of my time there, we then started thinking, this is not right. We need to listen to the business. We did lots of questionnaires. What can we change? What do we need to do different? Do we need to take into account Ramadan? Do people want prayer rooms, etc., etc.? So I think being in Dubai as well opened my eyes to some of the, because when you look in the office there, they had all the prayer mats and different culture and everything else. So towards the end, I was conscious of how do we make a difference. So there was the issue around females was one, right? Very few managers that were female were climbing the career ladder. And then it's the culture that we've got. We had to change it from a laddish drinking culture. So we changed a lot of the incentives from being not drink-related incentives. We need to take into account people's different holidays for Ramadan, different times. So I think at the beginning, 90% of it, I'd say no. It was like, join this club. If you're in, you're in. If you're out, you're out. And the sad thing about it, if I look back, some women had to feel they had to act like men to fit in, or some Muslims would have to pretend they liked it and didn't. So it was only towards the end when we did the cultural surveys and evaluation of what the culture and what we should be and become more aware that we then started understanding the differences. And I think now, based on some of the research and the work that we did when I was there, I think it's a more diverse culture, but still a long way to go. Long way to go, right? So, if you go to our German office, right, we still got a lot of people from Turkey, who are Arabs and who are Muslims, and that I think that they appreciate the differences there, right? London has obviously got that. You've got that in Birmingham. So there are pockets, but I don't think have we done anything for Muslims or Hindus or Jews or anything like that. Not really, but the drinking bit, I think that's toned down somewhat, but certain people still want to use that as a way of, still got to be an incentive, right? Yeah. Some companies I'm involved in now just do look at different incentives now to get different people motivated for different things. But I think we created an environment where it's seen as if you didn't go on those incentives, you were seen as you're not part of the gang. And a lot of people felt we're not in the gang. And if I look back, I get it, because I was always in the gang. I started some of the gangs, right? But I think now, I speak to Natasha I used to work with, and she ran her own brand within SThree. And if I look about, she was a working mum, and I remember just pulling her saying, why are you not going out of your team for drinks? Why are you not doing this? Why are you doing that? Yet she's doing everything else. And I look back now, it's wrong, right? And she's thinking, I'm going to get home, I want to be with my kids, and I don't want to go out for a drink with them. I'll get someone else to do it if that's what we need to do, right? So towards the end, I think it became more of a let's go down the gym, rather than let's go down the pub. So I think that changed.
Yeah, that's really interesting, because when I joined the first Friday o'clock beers, as it was, I remember the guy sitting next to me was like, "Oh, here you go, mate, it's a Corona," and I was like, "Oh, I don't drink." And then he turned around to my boss and he was like, "Mate, you need to start hiring these people properly." And it was banter, it was fun, there was nothing malice to it. But I was like, oh, okay, so this... And the thing is, obviously, coming, I've brought up in England, it's England, people drink, it's not an issue. And I've always had to live with that. I was even a club promoter, I never used to drink or anything like that. So it was never an issue for me. But I think my last year, 2014, in SThree, that's when a boss of mine, I was actually in Turkey with my boss, and we heard the azan, the call to prayer from a mosque. And he said, "Why aren't you going to pray?" And he was kind of saying it kind of poking me, like, "Why aren't you going then, mate?" I was like, "Oh, no, it's all right. It's okay." Because I'd kind of lost that, for Muslims, we need to pray 5 times a day. I'd kind of lost that because, how do you pray 5 times a day when you've got calls to make? You know what I mean? And that was never forced on me, but it was just kind of what I thought would be acceptable. But then in that last year, I kind of thought to myself, well, I'm just going to do it. And then actually what I realized was, and I think it's recruiters in general, but definitely within SThree, people have respect for you when you do the right thing. And that's what I found, that people would come up to me and start asking me questions like, "Oh, what are you doing in there, mate? I saw you're standing there." And that actually opens up the conversation.
Yeah,
and
course.
So I think a lot of it has to do with actually people being proud of who they are as well, and actually expressing themselves. So it does work both ways. And I think the overall thing that I'm trying to say is that the culture within SThree was to be accepting of people. Although yes, there was this very much of like, "Oh, why aren't you coming out for drinks?" They would still buy me a Coke. They just wanted me out there, and so there's that balance that I do see in that as well, where it's like I see that they want to bond. That's what SThree was about, was just bonding with each other.
Of course it was.
But then I think that other element of well, actually, we need to just cater to different needs and different people. And I think that's what you're alluding to, is that's the realization that you had towards the end, right?
It's not that. It's also, you go through different stages of the journey, right? And having daughters changed my perspective on how they would feel in a certain environment. And you go, no, I don't think they'd be comfortable. I won't be comfortable with my daughter being in that environment. And so sometimes it's your own circumstances impacts that. And also, if you're taking, what I found is if you brought someone on who was a Muslim and he's doing really well, guess what? He tells his friends, and they come and join, and then you start seeing these little groups building up, right? The Pakistanis together, the Indians together, and I didn't like that. You see the break, but because you relate to certain people, right? And if you're into the same things and culturally you understand each other, so we naturally progress to things that we feel comfortable with, right? I always wanted to be that person who would adapt to different people, hang out. Most of my friends were brought up, as I said, from Jamaican heritage. Most of my friends, 99% of my friends were black. I was brought up with, right? But then I could adapt and worked in a predominantly white environment and flip it, right? Put on my suit and feel, and so I think I was a chameleon in that sense, right? I would adapt to different environments without selling out. Right? To me, you don't sell out what your beliefs are, right? So if I'm in a certain environment and I'm hearing something that a racist remark or something like that, I'm like, nah, I'm not having that. So I speak up about it rather than some people I know won't say anything, right? Oh yeah, you're all right, you're one of us, sort of thing, right? I hate all that, right? So to me, it's you surround yourself with people that you're familiar with, and I think like you mentioned, I think education changes things. People start understanding it, and I think obviously when you start getting Donald Trump and this negative around Islam and stuff like that, it just blows your mind how ignorant people can be. And I think we do try and take on people that don't give a damn about all of that, right? And hopefully the recruitment process tries to flush out anything like that. I do think we try and be as accepting of different cultures and different religions as possible. I'm an atheist, right? So I don't get religion full stop, right? But if someone's got, Bill was a Catholic, right? And I'm thinking, I always give him a hard time about him being a Catholic, right? So to me, it doesn't matter. If you're a good person, you're a good person. I'll hang out with you if you're a Muslim, if you're a Sikh, if you're a Hindu. I don't care. But if you're a good person, you're a good person. So I think the world's changing. I think the younger generation are saying, right, that's not acceptable anymore. So I don't think you can't do half the things we used to get away with 10, 15 years ago. You can't get away with it, and you shouldn't be able to get away with it, right? I just think we need to change. My only concern is we go so woke, so extreme, that you can't even open your mouth about a subject matter to do with religion because you're worried about, oh my God, I'm going to be tarnished with some brush and I'm going to, get killed by the woke police, right? So getting that balancing act is difficult. I think it's going to be hard for the next generation because it's not clear what you can and what you can't say anymore without offending someone. So I'm glad I don't have to worry about that.
Yeah. This is potentially like a much deeper conversation probably for another time, but about like the way that the world is going and where we should draw the barriers and stuff like that. But no, again, I just want to really reiterate that like you started a business and that business has impacted not only my life but thousands of people's lives. Even like I said, this podcast, I use the principles that I learned working for Huxley, in terms of like, okay, I need to hit the numbers, I need to reach out to a certain amount of people, I need to close on this, I need to do that. All of these things, it has helped me in my life. I mentioned to you that I train people in how to start up recruitment businesses as well. And that's really just from everything that I experienced and I learned at S3, and it's just taking that out and now showing it to other people, and they're able to do that as well. So so that's testament to yourself, and just a big credit to you. What's your vision for yourself now? Where do you see yourself? What are you doing in the next 10, 15, 20 years until we have to return back to the ground where we all come from?
My aim now is I want my daughters they're at 13 and 11, so I want them to go to university. So it'll be around for them to go to university, and then when they're at that age, I just want to kick back and chill, spend 6 months abroad, 6 months here, have a few investments here and there, and just do a few rounds on the golf course, and just enjoy life, right? At the moment, your holidays are conformed to your kids' holidays and school holidays, right? So in the winter, I don't want to be in a cold climate, you know. So I just want to have the choice to do it, the freedom to do it, and I want my kids to be successful, right? I want them to be able to have a good outlook in life and have the best opportunities to succeed and not have to worry about them. So to me, I don't want to conquer the world. Right? I don't want to start a multi-billion-pound company and head of this. I don't want to be a CEO of anything, or I just like what I'm doing now. Hustle here and there, and just enjoy your time with the family. And I didn't, you know, my son is 28. I didn't spend enough time with him when I was younger because it was all about work and being successful. Now I'm at a different stage and a different age. My daughters get more out of me than my son did. So you know, there's an element of, you know, doing the right thing now, I suppose, is more important. So I've got another 8 years, I'd say, 7-8 years. So work until I'm 60, and then kick back and see if I can get another 20 years before you go back into the ground, as you said, right?
Very, very important question. I just want to ask you actually, just off of that. So again, you know, you rose to MD, CSO, CEO of a FTSE 250 listed company. That's the kind of the archetypal role that people speak about when they're like, okay, you know, this person, this father, he was so into his work that he may have neglected his family. Do you feel like that's kind of where you are at as well? And if so, would you trade it for more time with your family when they were younger, or would you say that, you know, where you are is exactly where you need to be?
Yeah, so I had 28, I think I was, and yeah, I think I could have given more back then, but then I don't think I would have been as successful. So you sometimes have to make those sacrifices. The fortunate thing is now, when I put a suit on, my kids look at me and go, "What are you doing? Wow, you look really smart, Daddy." They don't remember me wearing a suit. So when I put a suit on, it just throws them. Or why are you not in your jogging bottoms? And where's Daddy? Why has he not picked me up from school? Right. So I loved, especially during COVID, is the time I spent with my kids was amazing. Right, because I got to know them. They're at the right age. Right, there's, you know, 7-8 years of age at the time, and you're doing playing in the garden, playing cricket with them, kicking a ball, watching them play netball and lacrosse and all this sort of things like that. So to me, I'm glad I went through what I did, and it impacted, I think, my son now. I believe the relationship maybe I could have done more, but at least now I think with them, they'll have a real balanced upbringing. With Dad was around, and, you know, not flying all around the world that I was before. So I think it's better. I think I'm a better person for it. I'm a better dad for it. And my priorities change now, right? I feel, like you said, I've done well out of life, working wise, but it doesn't mean anything if you can't share it with your family. It's pointless, right? So having all that money and all that success, and you've got nothing. What's the point, right? So to me, it's, you've got to have this. If you've got this success and the freedom it gives you, you want to enjoy it with your friends and family, right? So to me now, is they've got a privileged upbringing now. They've got, you know, they go skiing and they do things that they sometimes take for granted, which I didn't start skiing until I was 35, right, 36, and they go on, you know, nice holidays. So to me, I just want them to be a kid, enjoy being a kid, right? Because you then get into a work environment, it all goes, right? So I just want them to enjoy being a kid as long as they possibly can, and I want to be fit enough to be around to see them get old and have kids potentially and all that sort of stuff. So to me now, that's my priority. Not about, is there anything else I can conquer? You know, is there anything I need to do? I don't feel in the business world that I need to do anything. Maybe, you know, I don't think there's anything I want to do. Like, I need to tick that box.
And I suppose as well is that, like, financially that they're set now as well. Like, you know, you've put in that hard work, you put that sacrifice, you sacrifice time with them as well. But on the other end, like, they don't need to want for money, you know.
No, they do. They're going to want for money, because I don't want them to be brought up in an environment thinking, oh, there's always going to be money there. So as far as my kids are concerned, they're going to have to work for it, right? I will give them support, but no, I'm not going to go out there and give them everything to make it. No, I want them to be motivated for different reasons. I don't want them to take a job because of the money. So if you want to be a teacher and it doesn't pay well, or you want to be a nurse or a doctor, and it doesn't matter. Do something that gives you the freedom to do that, and I can support you. But I'm not going to let you sit around and think, oh, mummy and daddy are going to pay for this and that. No, that's not going to happen. I don't want that sort of. I don't want him to have that sort of upbringing.
No, absolutely. Any final words?
No, look, thanks for your time. I'm not sure anyone's going to want to listen to this for this amount of time, but
5 minutes.
But look, appreciate. I'm humbled by some of the things you've said, right? And it's awkward sometimes when people say, "Oh, you've impacted my life," but I can say the same thing about what Bill's and Simon did for me, right? It changes your life, and I get it, right? And so look, thank you for your time. Appreciate it.
No, pleasure. For anybody who's watching up until this point, well done to you. No, very seriously, that someone like Gary doesn't do interviews all the time. It's very uncommon to hear somebody of his stature and level. He's probably feeling awkward at me saying that as well right now. But I hope you've benefited from this. If you have, make sure you like, share, and subscribe to the channel. And we'll see you on the next episode. Gary, thanks so much.
Thank you. Cheers.
Done.
Thanks.
Cheers, man.
Good. Wow.
Longest one you done?
Yeah, I think so.
Almost 2 hours, actually.
Shit, yeah, I've got to go.